A powerful new wave of executive action is sweeping through Washington, directly targeting organized domestic chaos,
Yeah.
unsecured borders, and bureaucratic failure, all framed under the banner of an America First agenda.
That's right. And for this deep dive, we're really trying to cut through the noise,
No.
go straight into the actual policy announcements, the executive orders, the law enforcement updates.
Okay.
Our mission really is to analyze the core pillars of what the administration's been doing recently, specifically this drive to restore law and order, secure the nation's future, and also challenge some long-standing establishment systems.
All right, let's dive right in then with probably the biggest headline grabber, this immediate crackdown on what the administration calls organized domestic agitation. This comes, we should note, following the tragic assassination of conservative figure Charlie Kirk. President Trump signed a National Security Presidential Memorandum, an NSPM, and our sources are confirming this is actually the first ever comprehensive national counterterrorism strategy specifically designed to uproot what the document itself calls domestic terrorism networks, right here on American soil.
And what's really striking, I think, is the sheer legal firepower they're bringing to bear on this. I mean, this isn't just local police work anymore.
No.
The Department of Justice and the FBI are reportedly combining forces, and the stated goal to follow the money.
Follow the money.
Yeah. FBI Director Patel has apparently indicated they're targeting the financiers, the people funding political agitation, stating that those bankrolling organized violence, they'll be pursued as domestic terrorists.
And we know who the first very high-profile target is, don't we?
We do.
The president himself announced active investigations into George Soros and his son, Alex, for potential RICO charges.
Right.
Now, for anyone listening who isn't, steeped in legal jargon,
Right.
that's the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, usually used for the mafia, right? Organized crime syndicates.
Exactly. And that's why this is such a major legal move. The administration's public claim is that these individuals provided alleged support of violent protests and organized political violence.
That's a big leap.
It's a huge leap, legally speaking. Trying to connect financial support for groups to the specific criteria you need for a criminal enterprise under RICO. Attorney General Pam Bondi has confirmed, quote, everything is on the table right now regarding Soros's Open Society Foundation.
OSF.
Yeah, OSF, because the administration is linking this kind of organized activity directly to the ongoing violence they say is perpetrated by radical left terrorists.
Okay, so this brings us squarely into our first section. The administration's broader push to restore law, order, and accountability. It seems driven by this core America First idea, emphasizing national strength, accountability, and, getting back to constitutional principles.
Right, and that domestic counterterrorism, NSPM we mentioned, that really sets the foundation. The stated goal is uprooting these identified, organized left-wing radical terrorism networks.
And they're focusing on paid actors.
The sources emphasize that, yes, law enforcement is tracking paid people committing acts of terrorism on American soil. It suggests a real centralized effort to dismantle the economic engine behind political violence.
And the financial scrutiny isn't just on Soros, right? It's wider.
Much wider. Beyond those headline RICO probes, an executive order was signed calling for an investigation and a full audit of all NGOs, non-governmental organizations that receive federal funding.
Why? What's the rationale given?
Well, the administration frames it as just necessary accountability, making sure public money isn't abused by groups that might be, acting against American interests.
Okay. And this accountability focus seems to extend right down to local crime policies, too.
It does. A very direct example. The president signed an executive order aimed squarely at ending cashless bail policies in certain jurisdictions.
He called those policies what? A government-backed crime spree?
That's the quote. Arguing that they let violent offenders back on the street immediately, which the administration claims just undermines public safety. But hold on, bail policies are usually set by states or cities, aren't they? How can the federal government actually enforce an EO like that? Is it just signaling, or is there real teeth?
That's the key question, isn't it? And the mechanism, according to the sources, is the federal purse.
Money.
Always. The EO directs the Department of Justice to review federal grant eligibility for states and localities. Basically, if your policies are deemed to promote crime, your federal funding could be at risk.
So leveraging federal dollars to influence state policy.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool. Often controversial, but powerful.
And this theme of, let's say, forceful federal action, it also touches on more symbolic things, too.
Definitely. Like national symbols and judicial strength. An executive order mandates an automatic 1-year prison sentence for desecrating the American flag.
1 year automatic.
Yep. And at the same time, another EO was signed to fully implement the death penalty in Washington, D.C., which is, a very assertive stance on law and order right in the nation's capital. So when you put all that together, the domestic counterterrorism, the financial crackdowns, the bail policies, flag desecration, death penalty, it really paints a picture of intense focus on domestic enforcement.
It does, and that flows, quite logically actually, into Section 2.
Yeah.
Securing the future, which inevitably means securing the border.
Exactly. The administration frames this as both a massive humanitarian and a security crisis. And we have to mention the scale of the missing children tragedy here. It's staggering.
It really is.
Our sources indicate over 300,000 children are still listed as missing. Now, almost 30,000 have reportedly been rescued, which is good news, of course.
Absolutely.
But many of those rescued were found to be victims of sexual trafficking. It just highlights the horrific human cost involved.
And the administration's response, again, seems focused on the financial angle, but this time targeting violence against federal agents. Law enforcement leaders are publicly demanding to know WHO is paying for these organized attacks, the doxing campaigns, the physical assaults on ICE's officers and Border Patrol agents.
They're saying whoever funds it will face charges.
That's the message. They're making it clear. Provide the money for attacks on law enforcement, and you'll face criminal prosecution.
And the risks these officers face are, well, they sound extreme. Border czar Tom Homan has been very vocal.
He has. He's called out what he terms the false narrative being pushed against law enforcement, stating it's a reason why, and this number is stark, there's been an over 1,000% increase in assaults on ICE officers.
1,000%. Wow. Yet, despite that danger and the political heat, ICE seems to be seeing support.
It seems so. They're reporting record deportations, but also, quote, an overwhelming response in recruitment, with over 110,000 applications to join the agency.
Interesting. So beyond just enforcement, what about policy shifts related to who comes into the country?
Right. There's a clear economic nationalism angle here. A major move is the new Gold Card visa program established by executive order.
Gold Card. What is that?
Basically, it expedites visas for foreign nationals who donate significantly to the U.S. Treasury. We're talking $1 million for an individual, or $2 million if it's a corporation making the contribution.
So prioritizing wealthy contributors.
The administration calls them high-value contributors, yeah. People who can immediately inject capital into the U.S. economy. It's a very clear signal about the kind of immigration they want to encourage.
That definitely changes the equation.
Yeah.
And what about the H-1B visas, the ones often used by tech companies?
Also radically overhauled. A new proclamation now requires a hefty payment, $100,000, to go along with each new H-1B petition.
$100,000 per visa.
Per petition, yes. Or if a corporation sponsors the worker long-term, it's $100,000 per year.
That must make it incredibly expensive for companies.
That's precisely the point. It fundamentally shifts the economics.
Yeah.
It makes using lower-wage foreign labor, at least through this program, financially difficult, if not impossible, for many large corporations.
So the intended effect is?
To force companies to either invest more in hiring Americans or to reserve those very expensive visa slots only for absolutely critical, highly specialized roles where they can argue domestic talent just isn't available. It's an explicit policy tool aimed at protecting American jobs.
Okay, let's shift gears now, quite sharply actually, into Section 3. This covers transparency and accountability, but in perhaps less expected areas. Public health and, interestingly, government design.
Yeah, this is fascinating. The health establishment is facing some serious questions, especially around autism spectrum disorder, ASD.
What's the administration highlighting?
They're pointing to data suggesting the rate of autism has, quote, skyrocketed by 400% since the 1990s, and they're directly addressing studies, controversial ones, admittedly linking Tylenol use late in pregnancy, or when given alongside vaccines with subsequent neural conditions.
That's a very sensitive area. What actions are they taking?
Well, there's been an FDA advisory issued about Tylenol use in pregnancy and around vaccinations, but the really concrete step is the FDA filing notice to change the label on prescription leucovorin.
Leucovorin. What's the significance there?
It's a form of folinic acid, and apparently it's been historically difficult for kids with ASD to access. Clinicians have been reporting some encouraging results, suggesting that maybe 60% of folate-deficient children with ASD showed improved verbal communication after taking it.
So making it more available is a direct response to some of that research and parental concerns.
Exactly. It seems like a practical step responding to advocacy and emerging research about potential nutritional factors linked to ASD.
And to dig deeper into the causes.
The NIH National Institutes of Health has launched something called the Autism Data Study Program. The stated goal is to aggressively investigate the cause and prevalence of autism, and importantly, to share the results transparently. There's language about listening to mothers who feel their experiences haven't been heard.
Okay. And the final piece you mentioned was government design.
Yeah.
America by design.
Right. It sounds maybe less urgent, but it could be structurally quite impactful. It was set up by executive order. And it's this really interesting attempt to modernize how people interact with the government.
So not just making websites look nicer.
It's deeper than that, supposedly. The initiative aims to improve the whole federal experience making services, whether they're online or in person, more user-friendly, more intuitive, and yes, more aesthetically pleasing too.
Why the focus on design?
The mandate explicitly says that government services lag way behind the private sector in usability. And they argue that this poor design actually has a high financial cost because they're maintaining these clunky old legacy systems.
Right.
It leads to frustration, low public trust. Think about trying to navigate some ancient veterans benefits portal or a confusing disaster relief form. These are the digital potholes across our nation they say they want to fill.
So the idea is better design leads to more trust and efficiency. How are they implementing it?
Through a new entity called the National Design Studio, or NDS.
NDS.
And its job is to implement standardized design principles across all federal agencies. The hope is that consistency reduces errors, makes things easier to use, and ultimately improves the quality of the whole experience, whether you're online or, standing in a federal building.
It's an interesting angle acknowledging that how government feels to interact with actually matters for trust and competence.
It really is. It suggests the recognition that efficiency and even aesthetics can influence how people perceive their government.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What does all this mean for you, the listener? This deep dive really reveals a very focused, very aggressive strategy from the administration.
Yeah, you see a clear pattern, a push to dismantle what they see as long-standing problems, organized political violence, border chaos, clunky government systems, even challenging accepted health narratives.
And the consistent theme running through almost all of it seems to be accountability, right?
Yeah.
And restoring national strength, however they define that.
Absolutely. Accountability is the watchword. Which leads us to maybe a final thought for you to chew on.
Go ahead.
Given the explicit use of powerful tools like RICO laws against political agitators and their financiers, and this laser focus on auditing NGOs getting federal money, what does this new era of following the money really suggest about the future accountability landscape for organizations operating in the political sphere? It raises some pretty serious questions, doesn't it, about where that line gets drawn between legitimate political action and what the government might label as criminal enterprise. We'll leave you with that to think about.